Welcome back, everybody. We're here for episode 13 of the Mariners Deep Dive podcast. Back as always, Luke and Jacob Westfall bringing you all the Mariners news and recaps that you need. Make sure, as always, that you follow us on our Instagram at Mariners Deep Dive Podcast and Twitter at Deep Dive Pod so that you stay updated on Mariners news when we aren't recording episodes and so that you know when these episodes are released. Now, the Mariners played 2 series since the last time that we recorded, which was before the White Sox series. So they played the Chicago White Sox in Chicago. And due to some unfortunate timing, we were unable to get a podcast out after that. But then they went back home. It came back home, played the Houston Astros for a 3-game series. And we're going to talk about both of those series. We're going to talk about some news that has happened, transactions, some updates on a couple players' injuries, as well as our thoughts and things that we think are going to be prevailing storylines from the 2 series that we witnessed when we were not recording over about the last week. So we'll get right into some of this news, which is the transactions here. So the first one is Sergio Romo, unfortunately, who we signed basically is like a replacement for who's the guy I'm thinking of? Casey Sadler, who at least I saw. I don't know if everyone else could see him on the TV broadcast, but during the Mariners home opener, saw him in the splint there for his arm. He's toast for the year, but we signed Sergio Romo, and the Mariners placed him on the 10-day IL, recalled Matt Koch, who pitched 1 inning in the first game of the Astros series, which was a blowout. We'll talk about in a sec. But he pitched well in that. And then Mitch Haniger, unfortunately, falls down to the COVID IL, which is a minimum of 5 days, but that's only if he has no symptoms and whatnot after those 5 days. We'll see how he feels. We called up Donovan Walton, who did play a couple of games in left field last year, but mostly he will replace Moore and Dylan Moore primarily for kind of like a backup infielder if we needed, because Moore can play a more comfortable backup outfield spot utility role. And we also made 1 trade for a reliever from the Cincinnati Reds, who we just dealt with earlier in the offseason, for Winker, obviously, and Suarez. Traded and acquired right-handed pitcher Riley O'Brien in exchange for a PTBNL, which is a player to be named later, or cash consideration. So it'd be one of the two, and it could be as small as $1 if it was cash considerations, or as small as some 29-year-old that we don't really want who has a $30,000 contract in low A. So it's probably most likely going to be nothing. The Reds had already DFA'd him. So basically he was going to hit free agency after 10 days anyways, but they had 10 days to trade him. And so the Mariners decided, instead of waiting for him to go on waivers or go on the open market, that they would just make a deal for him by sending the minimum anyways and get some more depth in the bullpen, which is something we have been doing a lot of recently, especially with some injuries. O'Brien has only pitched 1 year in the MLB. He's 27 now, but last year he played in 1 game and threw 1 1/3 innings and gave up 2 solo home runs. So hasn't really accomplished much in his MLB career, but he is now here and will most likely be in AAA for the foreseeable future of this season, unless there's a lot of injuries. So Jake, a lot of news on the injury trail here this last week or so. What do you make out of all of this?
That we got a lot of small injuries, which is fine, as long as we're not losing guys like Haniger or Romo, who actually has been really good in his few appearances. And then we can get guys like Lewis and Giles back. We'll have plenty of depth, but as long as we're not losing them for like the entire year, I think this team's okay. Giles is an addition to the bullpen. He's better than Matt Festa, who got torched in the second game of the Astro series.
Yep.
Which is expected. I had no high expectations for Festa, and the fact that he was really good through like 3 or 4 games pitching and then got blown up in the fifth. I'm okay with that. But adding Giles and Romo back will make it so we don't have to use guys like Festa as much, or like Justice Sheffield, who can't seem to throw a single strike.
Yeah, it's unfortunate we can't get any real good lefties in the bullpen, other than Masevich every third appearance. But overall, I mean, you're gonna get Romo back, you're gonna get Giles back, which we'll talk about in a sec, and then it'll lead to probably sending Coke back down, probably sending Festa down or Sheffield down or Yohan Ramirez down, and you send one of those guys down and then the roster shrinks and all of a sudden you've played a month of the season and you get into May and you need to send probably one or two more guys down from the bullpen because, your better relievers like Seawald, Castillo, Steckenrider, etc., are going to be able to go back-to-back days when you need them to. And obviously, we're going to hopefully get more depth from our starting pitching this year, which we've seen a couple times in the last couple of days. And all that mixed with kind of, just overall those guys having to go down because the roster shrinks and just not being as great and getting guys back healthy is hopefully going to turn into a much more well-rounded bullpen where you don't have these kind of like limbs hanging off the edge. It's kind of like hedging a bush, I guess you could say, just chopping off dead limbs here, honestly, with these guys that are on the end. They're just kind of there for depth that we're mostly just using when we're not really contending in a game, which unfortunately has happened a couple of times this year, but whatever. They get some big league experience and we get to see what we have in them here in the early going, and then we move on. But we'll move on now in this episode into some quick news, some injury updates. Kyle Lewis, who had been missing for quite a long time, has been dealing with on and off injuries with his meniscus he had torn a couple years ago, and then it kind of came back up last year. And then at the end of last year too, he has progressed to taking some live BP, which is a good sign. This was updated on April 13th, so it's been a little while. His next steps would be kind of playing some spring training games at an alternate training site, and then getting into a rehab assignment, and then getting back to the big leagues. And we have a lot of depth in the outfield right now and in AAA in that spot. So I feel like we'll be able to hold on until he comes back. We've been doing it for pretty much all last year and this year. So I think we'll be able to get through it. And then Giles, who we were just talking about, Ken Giles, is still about 2 weeks away from throwing, is the update with that finger issue. This was also updated on April 13th. So it's been almost about a week since this update, so he should be much closer. But of course, that's when he starts throwing, and then he's got to go through all the rehab and then the rehab assignment and then actually pitch in a game. So we'll have to see how all that goes, but not much going on there. And that's pretty much all the news right now. Nothing groundbreaking going on around the MLB worthwhile for this episode. So get right into the main topic of this episode, which was the White Sox and Astros series. We'll start with our quick recap of those two series. So the Mariners lose 2 out of 3 to the Chicago White Sox in Chicago by scores of 2-3, 4-6, and then won the final game 5-1 to salvage that series. Matt Brash made his first MLB start and gave up 2 earned runs in the first outing. The offense just simply could not get it going aside from an Eugenio Suarez solo home run, but after that, there was not much going on. Suarez had 2 hits, but we only had 5 hits other than Toro's 2 hits. And it was overall just a pretty rough day there. The second game of the series was Robbie Ray Day, but it was raining a bunch, terrible weather conditions. Things were going crazy. And Ray in that second inning got kind of torched. Got torched a little more later for 4 earned runs. Total of 6 earned runs for Robbie Ray, just 4 strikeouts. But he was still at least able to get through 6 1/3 innings. So we only had to use 2 relievers, which was Festa and Yohan Ramirez, which is a good sign. And our offense almost got something going. We did score 1 run in the top of the 9th. And, we also had a couple of runs in the 5th. And then we had the solo shot by Ty France, which was his first of the year. but just not enough offense in that game. Still not that offensive explosion that we needed. And then in the third and final game, which we salvaged when we were facing Jimmy Lambert, which we mentioned was a potential, and we also mentioned on the Instagram page, was a potential huge mismatch for the Mariners, a chance to take advantage of this team. We were able to jump on him in this game. Scored 5 runs, only gave up 1. Gilbert, 5 scoreless innings, only 85 pitches, still getting that pitch count up there. And then Munoz, Steckenrider, Castillo, and Seawald, pretty much 4 of our best guys in the bullpen, all through scoreless innings, including Munoz continuing to light it up once he starts to get that location down. But overall, I mean, we did drop a couple of pop-ups in this game that led to an unearned run for Gilbert. The wind was blowing around 30 to 50 miles an hour. So crazy wind gusts and swirls were making things tough for everybody, including JP Crawford dropping a pop-up, which was rule to hit because the wind was so tough. But overall, the offense got going. You know, we had a home run from Kalanick. His first of the year, he went 2 for 4. Cal Raleigh was able to launch a solo shot. Haniger was able to launch a 3-run shot. All of our offense came off of home runs in this game, but it was good to see some power. As well as Crawford getting 2 hits in this game. So that was a nice game to finish it off and at least salvage one and kind of give a little bit of optimism going into the home opening series. So Jake, when you watch that White Sox series, what are your quick thoughts on that series as a whole?
That our offense looked very bad until the 9th inning of the first 2 games. And I don't know why, but like it felt like in that series, our at-bats were way too patient. Like our hitters weren't jumping on opportunities, and they allowed, the opposing pitchers to get in good counts. And they just couldn't put together hits. Lots of strikeouts, just never having a good plan at bat at the plate for their at bats. And then in that third game, I thought it was better. And again, our pitching was dominant in that game, but I thought our at bats were better. Kind of starting to turn it around, which you definitely saw in the Astro series, what we'll talk about. But like our at-bats just looked like we have more of a batting plan rather than just kind of like going up and, I'm going to be patient and wait for it to come to me. And then ending up down like 0-2, 1-2, 2-2 counts, and then striking out. And then we kind of jumped on pitchers a bit more. Jump on that pitch down the middle on the first pitch, or jump on that hanging breaking ball in the middle of the plate in the middle, like a 1-1 count. Just jumping on pitches that should be hit, and not letting pitchers work into better counts.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there. Offense just wasn't looking great in that series, but we come home, we're facing the Houston Astros, and I'm thinking, man, I'm driving to this home opener. I'm getting in there. I'm thinking, man, great day, exciting, packed house, sellout crowd for the home opener. A lot of energy. It's all cool, but I'm thinking, I know it's Jake Odorizzi, and I know Marco Gonzalez has been pretty consistent the last couple of years, but he got torched in his first outing by the Twins, and our offense last year, I mean, it just feels like every year we get shut down by the Astros, and I'm thinking, man, there's no way that we pull this out, but it's cool to be here. And then all of a sudden our offense, things start to get rolling. So Marco pitches a 1-2-3 inning, and then all of a sudden we get a couple of base hits. Frazier leads it off. France advances him, and then Winker with a base hit. We ended up loading the bases, but couldn't do anything with it. I'm thinking, oh, come on, not more of this. Then we get another 1-2-3 inning from Marco. Nothing happens in the second. Another good inning in the third from Marco. And then we get all the way to the fourth. Marco has pitched 4 scoreless innings. It's been great. And then Kellenic gets on base, but then he gets caught stealing. You think in the inning's over, but then Rodriguez gets walked. Murphy, who's been good in the early going, picks up a base hit, and then Frazier hits a triple that, I mean, as soon as it was hit, I was thinking from where I was sitting that there's no way this gets over the center fielder because, he just doesn't have that much power overall, and it gets into the gap and scores 2 runs, and then all of a sudden it kind of starts a chain reaction. Suarez hits a fielder's choice that scores a run in the 5th. In the 6th, France with a double that scored 2 runs. Marco finally gives up a run in the 7th, but is able to get through 7 innings and just give up 1 run. He pretty much shrunk his ERA. And also, it was just an awesome outing and really saved the bullpen, especially in a game where our offense helped them out. And then Kellenic gets a sac fly. Frazier hits another ball, pretty much the same spot he hit the triple, but it ends up being a 2-run double. And then Suarez kind of puts the cherry right on top in that 8th inning with a opposite field home run, which is like good for him. And all of a sudden, the Mariners win 11-1. They only have to use 2 bullpen pitchers, but they use Yohan Ramirez and Matt Koch, who barely ever pitch and only in certain situations. And all of a sudden, the offense, it gets going. We put up 11 runs on a division rival that the fans were booing the crap out of in front of at home, in front of a sellout crowd. Guys like Winker and whatnot, new guys are saying how it's an electric factory is what he called it or something like that. But it's all good stuff and everybody's happy. And all of a sudden people are starting to forget about that really tough start to the season with those 2 road trips. Then we get shut out 4-0 and Verlander pitches 8 scoreless innings against us and only gives up 3 hits. And that was pretty painful to watch. We gave up 4 runs. Flexen didn't pitch too terribly bad in that game. 3 runs over 5 innings. He could have gone deeper. He had a really good pitch count, but Service just didn't want him to because I think maybe he thought he'd give up some more runs. But we can forget about that game because we came back yesterday. We win the rubber match. We end up winning the opening series against a big-time divisional rival who were pretty much fighting against to try and win the division this year in the Astros at home and gets us back to 500 again. We win 7-2. Pitching was good. Matt Brash had 6 walks, but he was still able to pitch around it with a lot of ground balls, only gives up 2 earned runs. The bullpen, that kind of killer quadruplet, or that's not the right word, but 4 guys, pretty much the same 4 guys that I mentioned in that game where we won 5-1 against the White Sox, which is Sewald, Steckenrider, Munoz, Castillo. It's a different order, but the same combination of guys, all pitch for 1 inning each. And none of them give up a run. Offense got going, home run, Ty France, a 3-run shot. It was kind of the capitalist of the offense. But we had that 5-run 4th inning where Rodriguez had an RBI single, his first career RBI. Frazier had a single that scored a run. And our first run was Eugenio Suarez RBI double back in the 1st. Big notes from that game. Frazier 2 for 4 again. France 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs. Suarez had the double, Terence had a hit, and Kellenic was able to go 2 for 4, as well as Toro and Rodriguez both getting a hit, which is hopefully a good sign for them. But overall, we win the series. Jake, the offense looked a lot better in 2 of those games, and which helped our great pitching in this series carry us to our first series win, and it's at home, and it's against the Astros. So when you look at this game and the implications of it, for our offense and pitching, but as well for our season, what do you kind of take out of this whole series?
This is potentially the series to get our offense going. A lot of our guys in our lineup are hitting under 200 again, just like last year. But I think that our hitters came up to the plate with more of a plan. In general, I think Adam Frazier finally started making good contact with the ball, and Winker missed out on like 5 home runs in this series. It felt like at the warning track, but I think this is what gets our offense just rolling. And I think going into two series with poor pitching like that, I don't think there's a single good pitcher on either of our next two teams, like at all. And so we should be able to go in and really get this offense on a roll. We weren't sitting back letting pitchers get into 0-2 counts. Even with Verlander, we were attacking early. We just kind of got unlucky a lot. He's good, so he's really good. So it's really hard to, get good contact off of Verlander. But it showed we weren't like scared of the opposing pitchers, and it might just be because it's the Astros and we know those pitchers and what they do, and our hitters were comfortable just taking off against them. But they need to continue that trend in future series because that's what's going to win us ball games. As for our pitching, like Gilbert looks amazing right now. He currently has a 0.9 ERA, and he's got an 11 strikeout to 1 walk ratio. That's really good in just 10 innings. Robbie Ray didn't pitch in this series, but he should be able to turn it around. Marco, again, like you said, he turned it around, and he actually looked really good with strikeouts in his game against the Astros, which was surprising. Our bullpen, Andres Munoz looks amazing. I think his only earned runs are from that home run he gave up.
Yeah,
Matt
just one
Brash,
solo shot.
Matt Brash looks really good aside from the walks, but he's got a solid ERA. Chris Flexen keeps making mistakes that lead to home runs. Or he has one home run given up. He keeps making mistakes that load the bases and then just kind of unlucky. But he looks okay. And then like Castillo looks good. Swanson looks good. Romo is hurt, but he looked good. Seawald looks good. Misevich doesn't look that good, but Steckenrider looks really good. And I mean, I'll give Sheffield some credit. He hasn't allowed a run yet, but like Sheffield hasn't given up a run yet, but it feels like he just can't throw a strike sometimes. But our pitching looks really good, and our hitting, looks not that good when you look at like average. But we're starting to hit home runs. We're starting to get RBIs. We're getting on base at a decent clip. And I think this was a great confidence booster for us. And we should be able to turn this into, I'll just start now, like predicting. I think we might sweep these next two series.
I don't think it's totally out of the equation that we could. And, the signs that teams show a lot of times when they're a really dominant contender is, especially in a division like this with the Astros, is, winning a lot of games in a row. And, the Mariners don't really go on those huge win streaks, like sweeping consecutive series and stuff. They just have never really done it. But, teams like the Astros, teams like, obviously like the Dodgers or like even the Cardinals, crazy streak at the end of last year, like they win a bunch of games in a row because when you have a really good, well-rounded, deep team, that's just what you can do, especially when you're at home against inferior opponents like the Rangers and the Royals. And, I'll address a couple of the things you mentioned real quick. You mentioned Gilbert. Man, he's just looked so good. And he's only gotten to about 85 pitches in both his starts. So if you add in, he'll get more well prepared for the season after his first couple of starts, hopefully get deeper, like 90, 95 to 100 pitches. He could easily go another inning or two with that alone. And if you take out in his last couple of starts, like if you take out the first 2 innings of his first start and he just throws his his third and fourth pitches, he could probably go a couple more innings. If you go to his last start and you take out those two dropped pop-ups, then he's probably sitting around 65 to 70 pitches. And he goes way deeper all of a sudden. So just some unfortunate circumstances have led to him having shorter starts, yet he's still been dominant. So I feel like, and those games too that he pitched in, we've been really competitive in as well. So it has allowed for the better arms in our bullpen to come in after him. And then for Sheffield, you mentioned, only an inning and 2/3, but hasn't given up any hits, just the one walk and the one strikeout. So not a ton to read into that yet. Hasn't been put in any high leverage situations. It's always nice to have another lefty in the bullpen. So, if Sheffield could finally figure it out, he feels like a guy that could give you some innings in the bullpen if you need it. If there's like a day like that, bullpen day, if you had to have it, or if the pitcher just doesn't have it that day and you got to take him out early, or if you just need a left-handed arm in the bullpen, but we'll have to see if that ends up working out. But I'll jump now into kind of a quick little preview here that we're going to do. Jake kind of already touched on them being not great teams, but we'll jump into some quick previews of the Texas and Royals series, which will start tomorrow for the Texas series, and then on Friday for the Royals series. Yes. Both 3-game series back to back, both at T-Mobile Park, so at home, and then we go on a road trip. So basically, the starting pitchers for the Texas series, which is the ones I have, it's going to be Robbie Ray, Logan Gilbert, Marco Gonzalez, like usual. And then for the Rangers, they got John Gray coming off the injured list. So it'll be John Gray, Dane Dunning, and Taylor Hearn. So 2 righties, 1 lefty, all 3 guys that Mariners should be able to take advantage of it, assuming their offense can hold the form somewhere close to that first and third game of that Astros series. And then the Royals, they don't have many great pitchers either, other than maybe Zach Greinke on a good day, but not much going on there. Don't have the starting matchups exactly for that, but it will be Flexen and then Brash for the first 2 games, and then presumably Ray for the third game of that series. Don't know the starters for the Royals, though. But some quick numbers on this Rangers series. Right now, if you compare pitching, which is where we really have the advantage, the Mariners have the 6th best team ERA. The Rangers have the worst in the MLB. The Mariners have the 4th best batting average against. The Rangers are worst in the MLB. And the Mariners have the 5th best team whip. The Rangers are 28th in the MLB. Their bullpen has been atrocious, but they do have a good offense. You look at the numbers, Mariners 22nd in batting average. The Rangers are 12th. Rangers are 12th in on base. They're 4th in total runs, tied at 9, both of these 2 teams in home runs. And then the Mariners are 2 spots behind them in slugging percentage, respectively 19th and 21st. So if the Mariners can get the offense going, they should be able to hopefully be close to or be able to keep up with the Rangers' offensive firepower. And the Mariners obviously have significantly better pitching. So if we can avoid getting walked off by Jonah Heim, which happened to us twice last year, and he has already been kind of on a little bit of a tear to start this season, then I feel like maybe we can get through this series. Jake, do you have any real big things that you're looking for in this series that will be the key to the Mariners' success?
So one interesting thing you can look up is the MLB probable pitchers. And then they show a matchup of, hitters versus the pitchers that are pitching. And it's interesting to show that off of Robbie Ray, there are, let's see how many total hits. Quite a few at bats, but okay. So you have 2, 3. I don't know the number to this one, 4, and I would guess around like 8 total hits off of Rangers players off of Ray. The only player who has a lot of at-bats versus Robbie Ray is Corey Seager, and he hits 171 against Robbie Ray. So Robbie Ray should have a really good game against this team. Also, is worth noting that Eugenio Suarez absolutely rakes off of John Gray. He is 364 with 2 home runs in 11 at bats. And then if you look at the matchup versus Dane Dunning, the Rangers hit very well off of Logan Gilbert historically. Lots of hits and limited at bats. But Mariners players hit very well off of Dane Dunning as well and limited at bats. And then Marco and Taylor Hearn, Mariners players hit really well off of Taylor Hearn. JP Crawford hits 583 with a home run against him. And Marco's really good against these Rangers players, with an exception of Charlie Culberson and Nick Solak. And it's also worth noting that the Rangers hitting stats aren't even that good, even though they're an offensive team, which is why they have such a bad record. Corey Seager looks good. He's hitting 294. He's got a home run, 7 RBIs. Nate Lowe is hitting 371 with 6 RBIs, no homers. But then everyone else is hitting under 230 pretty much. At least players who have significant at-bats. Like Jonah Heim looks good, but he has 15 at-bats. Nick Solak looks good, but he has 19 at-bats. So this offense isn't even that good. Like Marcus Semien hasn't been good at all. It's actually been terrible. So I think we should really have a good series against these guys. If I had to pick a game where I think we might lose, I can't. I don't see us losing. I think our pitching is better and our offense is better. At least comparatively. So I predict a series sweep, but if we do lose, it's going to be because Marcus Semien absolutely goes off on Marco Gonzalez.
Yeah, I think that our hitting is definitely better relative to, facing Rangers pitching compared to them having to face our pitching, because we're not too far behind their offense in terms of numbers, and they have the worst pitching in the league, and we have like a top 7 overall bullpen and pitching staff combined right now in the MLB statistic wise. So I feel like we have the advantage there. And then on the other side of things, you think, well, they have a little bit better offense. Maybe they're better. Maybe their pitching looks a little better because your offense isn't as good and whatever. Their pitching is so atrociously bad that it doesn't even compare to ours. So we're definitely better on all sides. We have the better manager.
All their starting pitchers for the series have an ERA over 4.7.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at it, we have the better manager, we have the home field advantage, we have the off day going into the series, and we're better in most spots right now. So I'd say we have a good advantage, but it's all about getting it done. And can the Mariners get it done? We'll see. And then
another interesting fact about this team is I don't think any of their starting pitchers have a win.
Yes, I don't believe they've won very many games at all this year.
I'm pretty sure all of their wins have come from games where they were tied or whatever, and a reliever was in, and then they won.
They were up like 6 or 7 runs on opening day against the Blue Jays, and their bullpen gave up like 8 runs in the last couple of innings. This is a team that I watched highlights of their games, the first up to this point, and they'll be up big and then allow a huge comeback because they have a terrible bullpen, or they'll be down big and they'll come back because of their great offense. Maybe they sneak a win out, but sometimes they'll be down big and then they'll come all the way back and then they'll blow it again because of how bad their bullpen is. And you can see it. All you got to do is go to the Texas Rangers Instagram page and look in their comment section, and Texas Rangers fans will tell you how bad Texas Rangers pitching is.
So we're not even going to face their worst 2 starting pitchers Their worst two starting pitchers are Spencer Howard and
Yep.
Colby Allard. And take a guess as to what their ERAs are, Luke.
Well, I know Colby Allard pitched in relief the other day, I
Oh, did
think.
he?
Yeah, but he gave up like 8 earned runs in about an inning. So I'd assume his ERA is probably like
Who
70.
is 19? Who is their fifth starting pitcher then? Because,
Yeah, I really don't know.
wow, I can't find who started this game.
Kohei
Oh,
Arihara.
oh, oh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Martin Perez.
Oh, that's right.
Matt Bush has started the game, and he was actually kind of good.
Yeah, the game Allard pitched, I think he came in right after Matt Bush pitched like 1 or 2 innings.
I think the Rangers also like to do that thing where they pitch a reliever.
Yeah, that was what they did with Bush, I think. That hopefully for
Yeah.
them will change when they get John Gray back, which is
But take
tomorrow.
a guess as to what Spencer Howard's ERA is.
15.
And 18.
Damn.
And guess how many home runs he gave up in one start in 3 innings?
In 3 innings, I don't know. It was probably what was the Angels probably. So I think that was the game Otani went deep. So 5,
Four.
4. Wow.
He had 5 strikeouts. He's almost given up more home runs than strikeouts.
Yeah. Spencer Howard is the guy they got in the Gibson trade last year from the Phillies, who's supposed to be like, who used to be like a top prospect, but is not.
All right. Well, let's move on to the Royals because
Yeah. So we're moving on to the Royals, and I actually do have the pitching matchups now. So the
ooh,
first matchup is going to be Flexen versus Brad Keller, who's been their best pitcher. He has a 1.38 ERA and 10 strikeouts to 3 walks, a .62 WHIP. So that could potentially be an interesting test for the offense. But then we face Chris Bubich, who has a 10.8 ERA and 4 strikeouts and 8 walks and a 2.6 WHIP. And then we face the worst of them all, Carlos Hernandez, who has an 8.31 ERA, 1 strikeout to 2 walks, and a 1.85 WHIP against Robbie Ray. So should be favorable pitching matchups. The way that they kind of line up statistically, they have a worse team average than us at 207, 3 spots behind us. Their on base is second worst in the MLB at 263. They have the third least amount of runs with 25. They have the fourth least amount of home runs with 5, and their pitching, which is also worse, and they're also the fourth worst slugging team at 303. But their pitching, they have the fourth worst team ERA at 5.13. They have the fifth worst batting average against at 264, and they're 24th in WHIP at 139. So they're worse than us in every single offensive and pitching statistical category. So obviously we have a big advantage in this series. They have Bobby Witt, which is kind of fun, but just like Julio Rodriguez, he has not done anything offensively yet this year. So it's not really a big threat to us unless that's his breakout series or something like that. And their pitching's bad. Their bullpen is really, really, really bad. Interesting offensive pieces, but not a cohesive, effective offense. Salvador Perez is not hitting anywhere near the level that he was last year, at least early in the season. I think in like his first series or two, he had like 1 hit. So we'll see how that all works out. But overall, this should be a series where we have a massive advantage.
so the scariest guys in this lineup are Benintendi, Hunter Dozier, and Nicky Lopez. Those guys are all hitting.
Nicky Lopez doesn't even slug. He's just an average guy. And Hunter Dozier had like one of the worst seasons in the MLB last season.
Yep, but I mean he's hitting solid this year. Everyone else is hitting 217 or lower. And they have a lot of guys who have just come in and gotten at bats and not gotten hits. They also strike out a lot. They only have 2 guys on their teams with more walks and strikeouts. And one is Carlos Santana, who's hitting .077. And then the other is Andrew Benintendi, who's been good. Merrifield's been bad. Mondesi's been bad. Perez has been bad. Perez doesn't have a single walk and 8 strikeouts. So this team should strike out a lot, which is really good for especially Matt Brash and Robbie Ray, who should pitch in the final 2 games. And even Chris Flexen will have a decent time with this lineup. The only thing is you just can't miss over the plate because they have a lot of guys who can take you deep. Like Mondesi has a lot of speed. Whit Merrifield, I would count on him to turn it around. There's no way he doesn't hit better than 152 on the season. But don't miss over the plate with Perez or Benintendi or Dozier. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're done.
Flexen gave up a home run to Maldonado the other day. And I mean, if we can avoid that, then because with Salvador Perez. So the funny thing about Salvador Perez is he's like from 2013 to 2018, he was an all-star 6 times. Obviously, there's no all-star in 2020, but he would have been because he was 17th in MVP voting. And then in 2021, he was 7th in MVP voting. He was an all-star again. And obviously the 48 home runs, 121 RBIs. But I mean, you look at it, his OPS plus last year is 127, 159. But overall, those great years of his career, he didn't even have that high of an OPS plus because, like, you look at his stats and 269 career batting average is good. A lot of home runs, a lot of RBIs overall. But it's like 104 career OPS plus. What's going on? The dude only has a 301 career on base percentage, which is like compared to a 269 career average. He barely ever gets on base when he's not hitting the ball or crushing the ball. And his OPS is only 764 because of that bad on base. So, and early in his career, he didn't slug as much, so that's not as high either, but he slugs now. This year, he's only has 6 hits and 32 at bats, 2 home runs, 188 average, 212 on base, 618 OPS, 76 OPS plus. So far this year, I mean, maybe he's a sleeping giant right now and he's ready to blow up in this Mariners series. But overall this year, he's been true to his usual form. He just has not been good at all so far this year, but he's still been bad in the same way. Like his stats still line up as a bad player this year as they do usually in his career. So he's still the same guy. He just hasn't been able to kind of hit it out of the ballpark as much so far this year. So it's definitely something you got to watch out for. He's a powerful guy, but if you can avoid the home runs to Salvador Perez, outside of that, he's not doing much against you because, I mean, he obviously won 5 gold gloves early in his career, but then after that elbow injury, he's never really been the same guy defensively, and he's obviously a lot older now. So that's another thing that the Mariners hopefully can take advantage of. I noticed they started to try and steal a lot more bases against the Astros, so I think that's something that they could potentially also work out in this series, is being aggressive with base stealing.
Yeah, and they don't have the best defensive catcher in the MLB behind the plate.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Kellenic had a really good jump on one steal and got torched by Maldonado because of a perfect throw.
Yeah, Maldonado's arm is probably the best behind the plate in all of the MLB. Like, in order to steal off of Maldonado, you have to have the perfect jump. You have to be blazing fast. You have to have a perfect slide and hope that the guy tagging you is like a second late with his slap down or his glove's not in the right place or something like that.
The even more insane thing about that play was that it was a splitter, so it's an off-speed pitch, and it bounced in the dirt.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, when I played baseball, I played catcher, and I know when I would throw people out, if I had a fastball, like middle or up or away, like easy throw, like gut them out every time. But if it bounces, they're safe. It's like there's no way, especially if it's on off speed. So like the fact that he can do that just shows the arm strength, but not only the arm strength, but the hand-eye coordination to pick it out of the dirt and throw it at the same time. And then of course he had the pass ball, but that was literally because the pitcher, Brian Abreu, in that series or in that game threw the wrong pitch to the wrong spot. I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be a breaking ball down and in, and he threw a fastball down and away, and so they crossed him up. So like, dude is almost perfect behind the plate. But when we talk about the Royals, it's worth looking at how bad their pitching is. Like if you look at their bullpen, they've got Stalmont, who has a 4.5 ERA, which is okay. They have Jake Brents with a 15.43 and has lost 2 games out of the bullpen in 3 appearances. And then Bubich, who will be playing against Jackson Kowar, has a 18.9 ERA in 3 innings. The bullpen, Brady Singer has a 12 ERA. They've got a couple guys without any ERA on them, but like these are guys who are eventually going to give up a run. Like Spear, I don't even know who this guy is. Snyder, Coleman, Scott Barlow's been good. He's probably their best relief pitcher.
Yeah.
And then they have good old Joel Piamps, who's not that good. I didn't mean to click on him, but this is something I'm just learning. Is they've got Amir Garrett,
Yes, they do.
who is notoriously bad. He's the kind of guy who's like, oh, he's going to be good this year after 2020 and 2019. But then ever since then, like, dude can't throw a strike and has blown a bunch of saves.
Correct.
Like Garrett had 29 walks last year. But people hit off of him. He has a bad whip. He has a 6 ERA. So if we see any of these bullpen guys besides, I mean, even Barlow, we could hit off of pretty easily. But like we should hit off of everyone on this team. And even
Yep.
Brad Keller, he's good this year. But Brad Keller historically is like an average pitcher at best. Last
Very
year,
true. Yeah.
last year he was bad. The 5.39 ERA in 26 starts. Lots of walks. Batters hit 297 off this guy. He had a 166 whip. That is insane. So I think we should be able to at least chase him from the game with a couple hits and work his pitch count up early.
Yeah, I think you're right on with that. And really, the only way we're going to see Barlow is if we're in a situation where they're trying to close game out, because he is their closer, he's their best reliever by far, and he's a pretty decent closer. He is their closer. They're not in very many situations where he can get a save, which is why he doesn't really rack up the save totals. But we might see him if they want to get him some work, because if they're never winning in this series. But I'd say overall, these 2 series, especially the Royals, our kind of get right series. You know, we had a really kind of grueling stretch. The Twins have that good offense that kind of showed up. And then the White Sox obviously are a pretty good team. Astros, obviously, one of the better teams. And I think we came out better than it could have been. You know, 5-5 is fine. Our offense really didn't start to get it going until the end. And you saw what we can do when our offense gets going. Our pitching, though, through it all, even when we were losing, was still very good, other than a couple of slip ups. And so overall, if we can carry the momentum of our offense and the strength of our pitching into 2 series against a couple of bottom feeders in the American League, I mean, if we could win all 6 games and we come out 11-5, like this is really where we can set ourselves apart from a lot of the competition, a lot of the middle of the pack teams in the American League, and put ourselves out in front in that conversation for AL West, American League in general, contenders early on, and then carry it throughout the rest of the season so that there's no doubt. I don't want to be that team like last year, you know, where we're close to the end of the year because we got hot, but like throughout the entire year, it's like up, down, 500, under, over, at, and you know, it's just so painful to watch, and you never know what's really going to happen. So I think that our offense, you know, and there's still a lot to get going. You know, like Suarez could be more consistent. Kellenic still needs to kind of turn it around. Julio hasn't broken out yet. Winker really has not shown up the way that we expected him to quite yet. Um, Toro has not shown up yet this year. Like there's a lot of guys that can still break out that have put up good contributing numbers in the past or elite numbers like Winker, who are still yet to show up. And when they show up, our offense could be really scary. And I think that our pitching is just going to be really good this year. And they're still missing, you know, Romo, Ken Giles, and whatnot. So overall, I think there's a lot of optimism for the season. We made it through this tough early stretch. We're back at home. We're kind of in full gear, getting close to the point where we're moving out of that phase where everybody's still recovering from the short spring training. We should get back into some better, longer pitched games from starters and whatnot. But rounding into form, and we're rounding into form with this podcast. We'll hopefully get you guys another episode at the end of the next two series. You should be able to count on it. As always, make sure that you're following us on Instagram, Mariners Deep Dive Podcast, Twitter, M's Deep Dive Pod, and make sure that you're tuning into every Mariners game so that you don't miss out on the action. But if not, make sure you check on our Instagram story because I like to post a lot of updates and news and stuff on there in between release dates. So for Luke and Jacob Westfall, as always, and for episode 13 of the Mariners Deep Dive Podcast, thanks for listening and peace out, Mariners fans.